Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone. Today is Sunday, September 4th. We thank you for tuning in to Esoteric Radio, the ER room for your soul. And today we have quite a show. We're going to be sharing a lot of information, some brand new revelations in regards to what's happening here within our universal system and our external planetary existence. Today's title of the show, which is How to Day for Good, is exactly what we're going to be talking about. Also, for anyone that is tuned in to the post, they will find that there's also some notes there that I just recently put in about some of the topics that we're going to do in that order, so it'll allow people to follow along a lot more easier. And I also wanted to basically say thank you to everyone for definitely tuning in and also becoming a part of this family, because as from here we're going to be getting a lot more larger now that there's been much clarity and information about what exactly is taking place, and it's also allowing me to adjust. It's allowing the individuals around me to adjust and to activate, and that's allowing us to get into more information that is applicable for this plane and ready for you. So I wanted to start off by talking in regards to the definition of the word man and woman. This is going to be most important for us because the reality is that we were never separate. It has only been made to appear that we're two different things. And this is a major revelation. Many people have spoken with me in the past, and I often talk about the difference in many of us, even other beings, extraterrestrials, etc. And because man and woman definitely carry a different intellect, we can at times feel like that we're separate. But the reality is that we are just communicating from two separate spaces. And when we begin to communicate from the same space once more, then we see that we're not so different. And so what this is really about is that if you look at the word man, which begins with M-A, and so we can take those two words because in the Kabbalah, it's known that the M is a mother letter, or it is basically a primary letter. So if you look at the word ma, you also notice that in the word masculine, the word ma exists there also. So how could it be that ma is masculine if ma is supposed to be a female? And that's really what happens from a level of etymology, that you get a chance to see very clearly how we're all projecting a certain energy, but in etymology and in our world in mathematics, it's still looked at as the same. Even the term Mars, which contains ma in it also, would be considered as a warlike planet, and so many people will consider the planet Mars masculine. But why does it have Ma in it? And this gets us to the grand revelation that Ma actually plays the masculine and the feminine role, just as for many of us, our mothers played the masculine and the feminine role in our reality. And so what this becomes about is that we're going to begin talking about how we started to become divided. And it's just important that people understand now that when I mention man, if you just hear me say that, I mean man and woman, because sometimes I have to stop my conversation and say mankind and woman, and it kind of stops my train of thought. But I want it to be clear to everyone now that when I say man, I'm talking about man and woman. So going from here, what I find is that the beginning of the popular Bible begins with division. It actually begins with a being split in half. And it's very important to understand the terminology and the symbolism that's being used, because that's going to give you everything you need to understand how to get rid of demons. We've now come to the complete conclusion that the word demon means divided men. And again, we're still now talking about men and women, because the symbol D actually makes half of a circle. And this allows something not to be complete. So anytime you use the word D, which is words like destroy, doom, devil, dirty, All of these words start with D because if there's information that is embedded and sent to let everyone know that all the D's, such as dividing, is going to cause a problem. So now we have identified the actual symbol of the problem. When a person begins to divide, then they become weaker. So the interesting part is that to get rid of demons, you only have to realize completely how everything connects together and is all one. And that there are many beings, just as there are many things in our world that still need servicing. And that our job here was to service and help those beings graduate to another level. Some people would say that using titles such as Messiah and Savior and things of this nature for yourself would be conceited. But the reality is that we all have the opportunity to even go into lower planes to assist the beings there, which are more like animals. Even the animals you see here, we have the opportunity to assist them and help their lives so that they can make a transition. Because we're all sitting here hoping that something else does that for us. When we attempt to contact our higher self, we are hoping that something above us actually begins to interact with us and give us knowledge and information about things taking place in higher states of consciousness. So one should not think that they should not be doing this for others that are on a lower level. And in fact, a great part of the shaman's life who's chosen that path have to come and to speak with individuals that are on a lower state of consciousness and to rise them into a higher state of consciousness. So the making of the divided man began with the sword, as they begin to denote that in the beginning of the Bible, being known as Tubal-Cain, they knew how to form and fashion swords. But the deeper esoteric knowledge is hidden within the symbol of the cross. As the Knights of Malta said, you may have the cross, as they said to the Cathars of the Catholics and the Catholics, that you may have the cross, but we have the true meaning to the cross. And what this was really about is the true meaning to the cross is that anyone who met a person with a cross, which is basically an upside down sword, knew that they were going to be crossing into the next plane, because the sword is of course used to divide the flesh from the spirit. So what happens is that as mankind and woman and many other beings began to war with each other, they began to get weaker, because each time they died, they did not come back in the same potency as they had left. Just as they say when you watch Earth, later on in Earth's generation cycles, it's not as strong as it was in the beginning. Thus the beings, the plants, the animals, and things that are being produced are only a mere fractal reflection of what the original was. So we can already see that dividing doesn't make us as strong as we are, and that's true, were before. Doesn't make us as strong as we were before. But it actually allows us to, in knowing this knowledge, to return to where we were before. That also brings in mind that any time that you separate from the energy, any direction you go in is the wrong way. So we don't have to use a north, south, east, west. On other planes, there are more spatials. It's simply one principle. If you move in the opposite direction of the energy source, you're going to be going the wrong way. So the two directions that you have here on this planet, because it's somewhat of a binary world, the way that we begin to live it now, is either in the direction, actually in this case it would be with the direction of positivity in the correct way, or in the direction of negativity, the wrong way. And I'm going to explain to you why negativity and the wrong direction is the wrong way. This has nothing to do with the principles of chi and grounding and things of that nature. The problem with the English language is we're using the same words to describe many things. But in this case, we're now going to take the term negative and make it mean something that is not good for you for a prolonged period. Negative has the ability to train you, just as it's been doing now in this reality. However, it has one way of training to where the person should learn and then not expose themselves to a great deal of negativity. Basically, if you put your hand on a stove, if you burn yourself, that's very negative. It actually damages you. So every day, if you just get up and put your hand on the stove and burn yourself, do you not see that the first time you burned yourself was the only negative experience that you needed? After that, there's no need for the experience if you've learned from it. So understand that about negativity. It is to occur one time so that you learn a lesson from it, then you can move on. So what we really have going on here is that when heading into this negative direction, this being, and this becomes you, this becomes any being that chooses to do this, they are now following blindly. They are actually wandering blindly because they've turned away from the source of the light. Now, many beings that have done this have actually still had a light within themselves that had been charged from the source. So when they turned away, they could walk out really far, or they could travel out really far through the dimensions before ultimately their light started to go out. But of course, when it begins, one may believe that, or the being may believe that, oh, I could go and find something else. But remember, there is nothing else. When you're together and combined, there's nothing else. Everything is right there. So, when turning in the wrong direction, one starts to head down into consciousness. This is manifested for us here in this world as what I call Saturnalian and Plutonian concepts. If you notice, the planet Pluto is very far away. In fact, it is what they're recording as one of the furthest planets from us. They're not even considering it a planet anymore because it's no longer supporting life. The reason why that concept has come about. Because the further you get away from the soul or the one, the more difficult it is for you to be able to support life. So we also see that the element plutonium is so potent that a small amount of it could blow up Earth in several Earths. So it also makes sense that plutonium has to stay way out there away from the soul, lest it blow up and blow up other things that do not have that kind of concept or basically are not involved in things of the plutonian nature. So we also have to realize that when we start to study a lot of this knowledge that's been coming out, especially in regards to the higher degrees of masonry, illumination, animism, or the practice of the moon and Anunnaki, and the Pauline arts and the angelic systems, that anytime you have one that's representing itself by itself, that means it's of the divided being. And so the dangers of this is that when getting out too far, one will start to notice that their light begins to go out. When this happens, it's no different than being in any dark area. As the light begins to go out, other things start to crowd around you. These things will just notify as other divided men, other demons. And let us also keep in mind, much of the plane is non-physical, so if there's tons of demons on the other side, divided people that die still in division, still not balanced, still fighting something, then there are a large amount of these type of beings that are also confused, also blind, etc. And so what happens is that as one enters into these darker planes, and if their light is not shining and they're not plugged into the one, then when the light starts to go out, they start to crowd in. And when the light goes out completely, then it's now upon you. So what we have an opportunity is to understand how every action that we've been making has been governing how well we favor in this time. Anytime there is a large amount of doomsdays predicted, the only thing that's happening is the message is being sent to individuals to begin to manifest their own ends. It's how it's controlled from higher levels. This is why it becomes of value to understand how to get out of the brain, because the frequency of the brain or the crown chakra is being manipulated heavy right now. And because the brain is basically a long tube that all leads to, it's in one direction or another, no matter how deep you go into the brain and how much you learn and how much you think you know, you'll still find that it just boils down to a couple things. But many people still feeding the brain rather than the engine of their existence have also begun to lose their light. This breaks down to simple principles. Because the heart is the largest endocrine gland and it's like an engine, it is the engine. It's the engine of the universe. Earth is the engine of the universe. Remember, Earth is an anagram for heart. The heart is pumping. It's taking things in and out. It's not just doing one thing. It's taking in toxins and pushing out purification. It has several tubes, several ventricles, several portals to other things, other states of consciousness, other parts of the body. Remember, what leads from the heart ends up traveling all the way to the bottom of the feet and all the way to the top of the head. So even just common sense in taking a trip, why would you stay in the head? You'd be better off working in balance, staying neutral in your heart, and then dealing with each situation and driving, basically leaving from your heart, because it would be more economical, more cost efficient for your energy, more practical. So what happens is that you will find now what will take place in this reality is many beings that have been on higher states of consciousness, in etheric plane majority of the time, not even really physically existing here on the planet. They're now in fauna or ecstasy. They've achieved this for hundreds and hundreds of years. Will be coming here to Earth because they can no longer reach the states of consciousness that were accessible to them because there's a problem with the engine. So this is very similar how it will play out on this fractal. As if a person is in the Himalayas and they're on that altitude and they're breathing the air that you can actually become a breatharian on, then they get in that meditation and in that Atma can begin to feel the contamination of the air coming from the wind via Japan. Because remember, the globe is spinning, so you will, at some point in the day, be exactly in the same air of Japan as the world turns. So what this would do for a person who's in an ecstatic state of consciousness is it would lower them a plane, and they would immediately begin to wake up. Because remember, a great deal of the higher states of consciousness and the deep lower states of consciousness are likened unto sleep. And that's why now I've completely discovered, now that I've had an opportunity to look over many of the deeper documents on the chakra system, etc., that when a person chooses to remain in one chakra, they have chosen to fall asleep because they're not cycling. And the highest chakra is likened unto the lowest chakra. They're identical because the real state that we're supposed to be in is balance. So, what this allows us to see is where we've gone wrong. And this is a beautiful thing for us because now we will be coming together stronger than ever. And anything that's about division we will remove from ourselves. You will be able to travel into other states of consciousness because that's what your job and your duty is here for this planet. It's the big part of working with the heart is actual physical activity. The internet is extremely about the brain. So the activity that goes on in the internet is virtual or nether, as it has net on the back, or internet or netter. So this means that, yes, it's a very expansive tool for another world that we're not physically in. We're physically in the heart. And this is why we see when we go to sleep, we have a beautiful dream, we're way out there, or you're lucid traveling, you're meditating, etc., you always end up coming back to the body. That is the clear indication, no matter how much a person wants to argue with themselves in division, that you need to be here doing something. And I've discovered that when you move from the heart, not only does it communicate from a physical level, meaning that you actually get out there, you help people, they thank you, they feel what you're doing for them, and you carry things for people, and you do all sorts of things. You heal people, you give them the cell salts that you just bought. When you do these kind of things, that's what equals speaking from the heart. And so there's another level of this heart, like I've just been having a time of my life with the heart for the last 2 weeks, because I really thought that the heart was still just remotely related to doing things in the physicality at first, and I said, okay, I can understand that. I need to start doing the more physical instead of the virtual. But then all of a sudden, other things began to communicate to me in what I'll call another brain. A brain that was far more expansive and able to calculate what was really happening. So basically it's like this. If you're using your brain in your head to figure out what's going on here, you could forget about it. It's not developed enough. As they're saying, we're only using 5 to 10% of it. However, if you use the brain in your heart, because that brain we're using 100% of, now you're talking. And you're literally talking. You have the ability now to speak with everything that actually exists because you're connected now with the One. Interesting part about being connected with the One, which is a really grand concept, but it's actual. It doesn't have anything to do with our knowledge and what we think is happening. It's always been going on. It's the reason why we're here. Like many of us believe that we're holding up the earth and that we're making it happen and all of this stuff. But the reality is that there are beings that are not even taking credit for that, and they're doing it. I mean, we're talking about vast energies such as what's located in the Milky Way, such as how this really spins on its axis, etc. But we've heard very little, especially in our language, from those beings because they don't need someone to say to them, hey, I thank you for doing that, blah, 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 blah. They're going to do it anyway. And that's how many of us mistakenly begin to operate, is if we don't get some type of encouragement from others and some type of maybe kudos and maybe even gifts, etc., then we feel like that we can't continue. But the universe and the heart never feels like it can continue, because if it knew for a moment that it did, it would be just like when a person has a heart attack. So what is a heart attack? It's an earth attack. It's when earth attacks the person. Because it still holds, don't let these Illuminatis and the Masons and the Archons fool you. They have very little control because they are binded. And that's why it's very interesting, because we'll watch how humanity will come to aid them and assist them in getting themselves whole again. Because regardless of how anyone looks at it, to understand spirituality and how to bind a spirit, you can bind and seal a spirit, but it still remains there. And it's only a matter of time before it gets strong enough to break itself free. So regardless, as I say here in the note, it's an inevitable problem that does not go away when even you seal what you're calling human beings, which are spirits, inside of planets or crucibles, crucifying them, crossing them to make them weaker, dividing them. It's still only a matter of time, because what you're looking at when you see all the stars in the sky on a clear night is everything here. Once those points begin to connect again, when we go completely into wholeness, which is happening here. It's not something that when we do, it's happening now, and you're just going to see aggressive amounts of it and what it actually equals here in the future. Those have been asking me, what do you predict? What do you think is going to happen? Same thing that always happens. Well, what always happens? What always happens is multiple beings that are more than equipped with dealing with the situation, from what we call now in this case positive or negative, realize that they cannot stay in the state that they're in, and they must return to the heart. So then they wake up, they activate, because that's what waking up is about, is that's your activation. You get out there and you get active. Then we become still the ultimate controllers of our reality, because all of this experience was being caused by us, whether we were in oneness or whether we were in division. So I wanted to very briefly, first of all, let everyone have an opportunity. We're almost reaching halftime, and we're going to take probably a 5-minute break, and I'm going to make sure our sound's connected when we come back. Also, we did get an opportunity to relocate because we had to use a temporary facility for some things that had taken place on our end. But now that we're back into a permanent facility, then we can ensure that there's no problems with our audio and sound like we've been having for the last 2 shows. I really want people to understand more deeply than anything is that you always have the opportunity to change. We're changing all the time. Because of the amount of cells and because of the type of generation and because of what we do with our body and our universe, we're constantly changing and moving, etc. So this gives you more than the reason to put the demon away, meaning the one that's in your mind saying, well, that's not necessarily how it is. See, there's still reptiles running around. And then those reptiles, once they get to enough power, they're going to destroy things. And then when they destroy things, as I said before, regardless of what happens, we're going to be together. There are many people that are very equipped once they wake up to deal with any situation. So, if something happens to our world, we'll be all going into the next existence together. And just as this one was created to facilitate and house all the beings here, there too is another. Many. As we talked about, Earth has different states. You can see this one if you've ever had the opportunity to go through a near-death experience. Earth has a state in which it's completely alive, and that all the trees and all of the plants and things are all communicating with each other. This is exactly the state that you're going to enter into when beginning to come from the heart. Understand that it doesn't take long for your energy to begin to shift from the brain. It wants to do that anyway because the channel that the brain is on, just like they show you the frequency to much of the organs and things in the body, the reality is first built to keep people in the books and in the brain. And then from that point, once everyone's on the brain frequency, they start to tap into the brain frequency, the negative controllers, and send messages about doom. And thus, anytime you're around someone, and you may not even be thinking about that, you start to get a condescending tone to your thoughts. Like, well, what if it doesn't work? And what if something happens? And that's division. The reason why the division or the divisive one is like that is because it's turned in the opposite direction of all there is, the creator, the one. And this allows it, because it has its back turned, not to see what's going to happen next. So thus it's always wondering blindly what's going to happen next. I come to tell you, you are what happens next. When you turn your direction and gather in with those who are already working in oneness, and the reason also that is important for this, for those who may be experiencing spiritual plagues, meaning that they experience dark dreams and things of this nature, I can tell you right away how to get rid of these beings. When you connect with oneness, all of us are there. If you leave division alone, there are beings more than equipped to deal with the ones that are plaguing you now. We'll move in right away. But while still in division and listening to all of these different energies that are still divided and still need to be guided back into the light, meaning they need to be shown the source, just like Dr. Baldwin C.V. talked about, that when a human leaves this planet and they're confused and they cannot see and then they're in the dark, they're looking for a biorhythm or something that they recognize. And at times, that's why some of the brightest people that still may not be tapped into the oneness themselves, but they are carrying so much energy and they have so much potential, tend to be crowded by negative beings that are attempting to pull them down. This is many of the times what you see within stars and actors. They are really powerful beings and that could really be doing a lot, but because they don't understand the difference in the oneness versus where they are, then they are being drained. So, we also call this now 3, 2, 1 contact. How this works is that it's self-evident that you came from two beings that connected together and then you came out. So you are in essence number 3. What happens with the baby when it's in this state is it's new to everything, and it's really just joyous to be back again. And this goes on for a while until it hits stage 2, which is it starts to become division. It starts to know what it likes, know what it doesn't like, know when it wants to go to sleep, not when it wants to go to sleep, who it wants to be with. So this is division now. Later on, after this takes place, who knows how many lifetimes it may take for an individual, but they enter into one. They start to realize that it's all really the same. That the reality is, even from a scientific level, that everything is made out of an atom. So we're just looking at different variations of atom. In fact, man's situation, and I mean also man and woman on this dimension, is making them now atomic, which is the word, or Adamic, which is the word of this race, which is that when it gets to a certain point of collecting itself, it explodes. And then it implodes, and it does all sorts of beautiful things. So, also, a very, very wise statement for woman. Woman now has to realize that because she too is born of this planet, and this planet is servicing many beings, servicing dogs, cats, it's servicing birds, it's servicing papaya trees, it's servicing humans. So it's servicing so many things. When a woman says, I am like Earth, which is, again, we're seeing as the heart to the universe, then she must now understand what that means. Because when woman is divided, she will begin to believe that she's with the female or the feminine of all there is, but in reality, just like the man, when he's divided, she is not. She's in service to self. So, I would suggest that we all start taking the major lessons that what's going on around us has to teach us. We are also launching the Wholeness Foundation, which is at www.internalenergy.org. And what it becomes is the yin of the resistance is yang. And both of the networks will run in conjunction. They will be set up and interlinked properly to where a person gets to the bottom of what they need to get to the bottom or the top of in order for them to come into wholeness. We will keep modifying the network and refining the network until it's able to do that for a person within a short period of time. I welcome everyone now to especially get involved with me because, and the other individuals that are around me, because we have a clear vision to what needs to happen. It's going to happen anyway. We are just the individuals that do the steps in between. And it's very important to understand that because some of us take on a lot of weight that is unnecessary for us to take on ourselves. Understand that you're to do as much as you can, but it's going to happen anyway. And this allows you to get rid of, well, what if we fail? We're not going to fail. We already failed. It's being in the root of your consciousness versus in the balance and center of your consciousness, or being in the brain. He's risen. Or where is he at? These are the type of concepts that allow us to see very directly. Again, if anyone wants to say, I deserve credit for something, there are beings that are doing things that are far more phenomenal and haven't said a word. So we should learn from them. Again, we're at now 22 minutes into the conversation. We have a 1-hour show scheduled here. I'm going to give everyone an opportunity because we did go through a great part of what we were going to talk about. There's a few callers in on the line. If you do have a question, you can press 1, and then I'll get the indication here that you do have that question. In addition to that, you can also type in the chat box if you have any questions. And it's very important at this point to ask questions because this is going to get you to a higher level of what you, let's say a more balanced level of what you wish to obtain. And so everyone still realize that this is something that you now have to do for yourself. And the brain, because it's not cycling energy at all, it often has a person feeling like they are by themselves and alone. The reality is that you're not alone because when you came into this world, you were already being serviced by spirits. This is when one spirit pulled you out of the mother's womb. And then the mother actually held you, and she's a spirit. The deeper meaning of I am not the body. Well, of course you're not. So you're all spirits then. And so anyone that tells you, oh, well, you're not supposed to talk to spirits, well, that's spirituality. But know what you're saying to spirits and what they're saying to you. And it's very easy to know that because if a spirit starts talking about division, it's a demon. And at that point, you have an opportunity to convert that demon. And this is why the ancient scriptures were called verses. Because in your mind, there at times would be a battle. And in your heart, there would at times be a battle. When certain things that had not been convinced yet would come upon you, and they would send an idea, and then you would send one back. And that was called a verse. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little brief break, about 7 minutes. Then we're going to come back and we're going to get into the next segment of the show. Okay, we are forward. I do thank you for your time and your attention in this matter of what we're bringing forth, which is wholeness and coming from the heart. And what we're going to do is I'm going to, again, take people into a larger part of the transformation that's going on the planet. There's a large part of the planet, just like what we see in martial arts and in training, that it trains you to strengthen yourself. And we can definitely see that there could be very few things stronger than our planet. This is because of the conditioning of what exactly has been going on its surface for who knows how long. There's multiple numbers that are always thrown out, even in the millions of years, how long Earth's been in existence and even beyond that. And every time existence does come across Earth, it does make Earth stronger because she's actually able to absorb a great amount of her own energy. And that's what people need to understand also about this planet. This planet is in balance for how much energy that it can actually take. Because all the energy is coming from it. This is why there is power in now knowing that the heart is the communication center for everything, because you're sitting on a planet with multiple portals. So it's like basically you're sitting on the space station or in the actual hub of the universe. The only thing that's now necessary is for you to be seen as responsible for going into other states of consciousness and giving them the grand awakening also. Like I said, this is a major part of what's going to happen anyway, but there are people, places, and things that are acting out the in-between processes. And so we actually have an opportunity to, when connecting with this oneness, it gives you energy. Then you can take all your applications that you've been using, it gives you a path, it gives you a key. Now you can go and use them. So all of what you've been using with the Shilajits and the Gene Builders and things of this nature, all of what you've been doing in your meditation, all of what you've been doing with your crystals, I'm now personally giving you the key to activate it all. Because remember, Aaron kept the breastplate on his chest, or the Aryan kept the breastplate on his chest of the 12 crystals that corresponded to the 12 divided tribes here on the planet. 12 divided by 4 equals 4. Excuse me. I'm looking at the other kind of math. 12 divided by 4 equals 3, but if you look at the 12 tribes, you could take 4 into it, and then what it'll give, well, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm messing up my numbers here. What I'm actually thinking about is I'm thinking about the 12 months and the 4 seasons. This is something important to understand because the 12 months correspond to the 12 tribes, but there are 4 seasons. When there's 4 seasons, you have symbols that they actually call the delta. This is how they were communicating. They're just triangles. So you get 4 triangles, and that makes a cross. This is the symbolism that is being used for the human being and this system here, because if you have 2 triangles put together, it's called a diamond or a divided man. Because you still need 2 more triangles to make this cross. This is something I was thinking about this morning, and I was wondering how I was going to be able to articulate it properly, but I think it came out better then than any other time. I wish I could also have Pablo draw this symbol very briefly, but it looks like a square unfolded. And then when it unfolds, it says 1 triangle on top, 1 triangle on the bottom, 1 triangle on the left, 1 triangle on the right. Now, these triangles are very important only because the language of this planet for a long time was just triangles, which is Sumerian. Notice how play and fast forward and rewind are just triangles. And those are the only things that would be really necessary if you were in a time travel. All the extra data would actually just cloud your whole system. We discovered here that when coming outside of this system, there are cogs, if you were to say that, but they're really very complex geometric patterns. But they have teeth. And on this particular system, the teeth of the cogs of this clock is just a triangle. However, the next piece, which may contain 1 triangle at certain spots, but the next piece is more like a glyph. So if you saw the wheels of time, what you would see is multiple languages, what I call shuffling into each other. And then each of these languages are what came from the previous language. Not anything how language can create a whole construct. It basically makes what's going on here become sound. The symbol becomes sound. Someone writes the symbol, then they make a sound for it. It's showing you how reality is developed. So when there's a new one, the division takes place more, and the shape becomes more complex. And one can get lost there. You can only imagine if you're not given the simple principles of how to conduct energy properly, then nothing can really go well from there, because you, out of non-energy mismanagement, it would lead you into situations that are horrible. And that's why what we're experiencing here on Earth has been like that up until this point. People should listen to this conversation over again, because realistically, I could do more for people definitely out in public, and we're going to show a lot of stuff that we put together. And we also, this whole thing is called the Resistance Real People. It is, of course, going to be in conjunction with the Wholeness Foundation. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to go out and we're going to go to different places, and we're going to meet people, and we're going to show you the reaction from those people in real time when you speak from your heart to them, and you use your heart so people can really get it clear. In addition, Muna and John, thanks so much, had already got a chance to do a video and just get out there and show that we're real people behind this. We're not droids, we're not machines. We've been digging to find the truth, and here it is. The truth is self-evident, and now we get an opportunity to tell each other, and then we share with something that's far more grand than any of us could ever put in our brain. It's just going to happen. So I do have a caller that does have the indicator up, and since there's about 7 more minutes in the conversation, we're going to go ahead and allow that caller to come in. Caller, your last 4 digits are 1369. And
hello.
Good day.
Good day, Sevan. Shalom. Name is Heil. I have a question. I like how you said we need to start harnessing our energy. And the question pertains to, I feel it's the ether that surrounds the earth. Basically, it surrounds our body, correct? And I've been like getting hits on different parts of my body. And, they're alert, zones, basically I feel they're alerts or maybe, something to, pay attention to. My question is, how can I harness this energy that I'm feeling and also am I diagnosing it correctly? And that's what it is.
Actually, the reality is that's why I was talking about how it was going to happen anyway, because this alignment is really taking place, which is a great deal of why we're coming into this state of consciousness now. When you have large celestial bodies coming in close proximity to one another, what you would physically, spiritually, mentally feel is a jolt, slightly as it adjusts. And it's also like our responsibility, like imagine there's the spaceships and there's the spaceports, but one of the most important people is the one who knows how to land the ships so that they don't crash into each other and so that they fit into place properly. Because that's really what we have really in front of us. It's amazing that there's a governor that is far more equipped, and that's why I was talking about this today, and it will be the title of a few shows after this. But what you're working with the heart is it has more ability to adjust to those connections, basically. And that's what they were saying about the adept. Now people are going to have no choice but to be either adept or to get instructed, because an adept already is not wrestling with planets. Adept is not in any type of division. When you're wrestling with planets, this means that you don't like Saturnalians, you don't like Martians, you don't like Venusians, you don't like, and it keeps going on as far as the constellations are concerned. Now you don't like Dracos, and then you just like everyone else except for the Dracos. So basically it becomes madness because it's still the divisive one, because the divisive one can have one going in the direction like that for a prolonged period of time, but it's all a lesson because you're still learning real things. That's one thing that we should not get confused. Just because we've done a bunch of dissecting all of what's been going on here, that's actually working in our favor because we're learning the responsibility of guiding our own souls. Because that's a big thing. That's when every single choice that a person makes, they actually are present for that decision. Like sometimes it's just small sometimes. You get in the cab, they're playing the crazy music. You don't say anything because you want to be nice. But the reality is that you have to tell the person, hey, you think you can shut that off for me? And you'll find they have no problem. But and that's what some of the responsibility I'm talking about, because your consciousness, it's almost like you're holding something that can't take too much abuse if you can prevent it. What I mean by that is that it's like you're carrying something that is pure, and you should be more or less sterile with how you're handling it and how you're letting people handle it. Because this is when the power is given to an individual, that's how they're going to have to be with it, because the power is incredible. But it's definitely... Go ahead.
let me just chime in. That's funny you said that, because how you say how people are handling it, and that's what I feel at times that I'm not controlling the movements, and, the hits that I'm getting, and it's other people controlling it, and, it disturbs me just because I'm like, damn, I need power, the control of my own self.
I know we have about 2 more minutes in the conversation, but that also brings us to the end of the conversation about, there's one thing that's mentioned here, it's called money, currency, and the current. And this is the final part of this, because much of our control has been lost because of the financial currency situation. So what I talk about is now there's an alchemy to money. I just discovered that basically what money does is it just records how many people it's been in the hands of and their karmic level. And so when you get involved with like negative money, or money that has negative energy being given from jobs, etc., then it has this frequency to it that when it's planted, it doesn't grow much. But now we have the opportunity to actually take our money and plant it into things that are growing, and then watch it become abundant. And this also manifests in our reality as we're starting some projects, and I want people to just get involved with me. They're starting organic markets and things, and they're flourishing in a major way. And it's service to the public, especially because they need it here in Costa Rica. There's connections with a lot of crops and food, things of this nature. And they're already brokering large deals coming from Walmart and things with this country for, 2 or 3 cents a melon. So what we have the opportunity to do is to make this into something also that indicates how intelligent we are. Because many individuals will just stick to one thing but don't understand how to truly emancipate a world into a higher state, or a balanced state. I even have to begin to check myself about that. A balanced state of consciousness. And so, but this is actually happening in real time. So I wanted to talk to people, and that'll be my next show, about the alchemy of money and how it exactly works. We'll just take it apart piece by piece, symbol by symbol, to show people that the ISIS sign or the dollar sign is in the current of how the energy flows on the dimension of the curve in the straight line is really going to give us the knowledge of how to free ourselves. But there are certain things that we need to adjust. And that's why I said this is, in essence, the real money laundering, like washing the dirtiness off of the money in order so that wherever you're putting it as an investment, it will flourish and come forward. And this will be an example to the people of how the mind, like they give people Nobel Peace Prizes for doing stuff like this. Like they gave the guy the Nobel Peace Prize for doing microloans, loaning $10 or $15 to people, just farmers, and that buys all the seeds they need, and they can pay the loan back and begin to get themselves out of their rut again. This is what's happening when you're coming from the earth. I wanted to take time to thank everyone for coming in. Blog Talk Radio, thanks for hosting this.
No problem. Shalom.
Oh, by the way, if anyone presses 1 when they get off the conversation, it does help Blog Talk Radio boost the show's responses, etc. So there'll be a brief recording, and then you can listen or press 1 and then hang up the phone. Thanks.